They say time heals all wounds, but the truth, time doesn't heal, you do. And sometimes it takes weeks of silence, of no contact, of facing yourself in the mirror, to finally hear your own heartbeat again. In the very beginning, when silence enters, it feels like standing in the middle of a storm. The mind spins in circles, replaying every conversation, every memory, every detail that might explain why things happened the way they did. At first, the noise is deafening, like thunder inside the chest. His thoughts don't let him sleep. His emotions pull him in 100 directions at once, and every minute feels heavier than the last. No contact, in those early days, feels less like peace and more like chaos. It's as if someone pulled the ground from beneath his feet, and now he's tumbling through the air, unsure if he'll ever land again. But here's the truth about storms. No matter how violent, they don't last forever. Weeks into the silence, the thunder inside him softens. The waves of emotion still come, but they don't crash with the same intensity. Slowly, almost quietly, something begins to change. His body adapts to the silence. His heart no longer jumps at every notification, every sound, every possible sign of contact. The silence that once suffocated him now begins to feel like space to breathe. He starts realizing that while the pain is still there, it no longer owns him. The storm hasn't disappeared, but it has weakened, and for the first time, he sees a glimpse of calm breaking through. During those weeks, he also begins to notice how much of the chaos was created by his own mind. In the beginning, the brain is restless. It invents stories, creates false endings, and rewrites the past in ways that make him question himself. But as the days stretch, the grip of those thoughts loosens. He realizes that not every unanswered question needs an answer, not every why deserves to be solved. What was once noise becomes silence, and in that silence he discovers clarity. This is the moment he begins to understand that the storm was not outside, it was inside him. And now, piece by piece, it is settling. With the storm settling, another shift begins, awareness. He starts to notice things he missed before. The quiet forces him to look at his own habits, his own patterns, his own role in what happened. Instead of focusing on what was lost, he starts focusing on what can be built. The same mind that once tormented him with memories now begins to show him visions of who he can become. This is the subtle power of no contact. It strips away distractions and leaves him face to face with himself. The storm clears just enough for him to see that healing isn't about forgetting someone else. It's about rediscovering himself. And yet, this stage is not easy. Just because the storm is calming doesn't mean the skies are clear. There are still nights of restlessness, days of temptation, moments when the silence feels heavier than the noise ever did. But even in those moments, he notices a change. Where before he felt powerless, now he feels choice. Where before he reacted, now he reflects. The storm may linger, but it no longer controls him. And that shift, subtle as it may be, is the first real step toward freedom. Finally, as weeks pass, the storm that once seemed endless begins to look like a memory. He doesn't forget the chaos it shaped him, but he no longer lives inside it. He steps out of the storm with scars, yes, but also with strength. He realizes the silence didn't break him. It revealed him. And that is what truly happens. The storm, violent and unrelenting at first, settles into a quiet strength, and in that quiet he finds something he thought he had lost long ago, peace. In the early silence, reflection feels like punishment. He sits alone, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail of the past. The laughter, the arguments, the promises. Every moment comes back in flashes that sting sharper than the absence itself. At first, he hates the reflection because it feels like a mirror that won't look away. Every flaw, every mistake, every wrong word he ever spoke stares back at him. But as the weeks unfold, he begins to see that reflection is not the enemy, it's the weapon. It's the scalpel that cuts away illusions, the torch that burns through denial. Where once he ran from his own thoughts, now he sits with them, letting them teach him. Reflection has a strange way of forcing honesty. In the storm, he wanted to blame someone else, fate, timing, her choices, his luck. But in the quiet weeks of no contact, blame starts to lose its shine. What once felt comforting now feels empty. Pointing outward no longer brings peace. So he turns inward. He starts asking questions he once avoided. What did I ignore? What did I give up on myself for someone else? Where did I stop listening to my own voice? These aren't easy questions. They sting. But every answer peels back another layer of truth. And it's through this process that he begins to rebuild himself, not as a victim of the past, but as the architect of his future. This reflection also reshapes his view of love and connection. At first, he sees relationships only through the lens of loss, what he no longer has. But reflection stretches that lens wider. He starts to see not just the person, but the lessons. He remembers the small red flags he ignored, the times he compromised beyond reason, the moments when silence could have spoken louder than words. And as he gathers these memories, he stops calling them regrets and starts calling them wisdom. He realizes no contact isn't just distance, it's education. The silence is the classroom, and reflection is the teacher, carving lessons into his soul that no book could ever teach. In the stillness of reflection, he also reconnects with himself. Before, his identity was tangled with someone else's presence, with their approval, with their love. Now, reflection forces him to look at who he is when no one else is around. And in that process, he rediscovers parts of himself he forgot, old dreams, forgotten ambitions, inner strength that got buried beneath the weight of a relationship. It's in these quiet hours that he picks up pieces of himself, polishing them, remembering their worth. Reflection, instead of tormenting him, now gives him direction. It tells him, you are more than what you lost. You are everything you choose to become. Weeks into no contact, the power of reflection sharpens even more. He begins to realize that silence isn't empty, it's full of answers he couldn't hear when he was surrounded by noise, full of clarity he couldn't find when he was chasing someone else's approval, full of lessons that only solitude could teach. And as he reflects, he learns that pain isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning of wisdom. Every scar, every sleepless night, every unanswered question becomes part of his arsenal. Reflection transforms suffering into strength. It turns memories into motivation. It takes the fragments of who he was and welds them into someone new, someone unbreakable. And in the end, reflection becomes his sharpest weapon, not against others, but against the old version of himself. The man who was desperate, lost, restless. He no longer exists in the same way. Reflection cut him open, yes, but it also healed him. It stripped away illusions and left only truth. And now he carries that truth like a blade, ready to carve out a life that is no longer defined by loss, but by growth. That is what really happens weeks after no contact. The silence forces him into reflection, and that reflection forges him into someone stronger than he ever imagined. In the first days of silence, the heart feels poisoned. Every beat carries a memory, every breath feels heavy with attachment, and the absence is like withdrawal. It's not just emotional, it's physical. His chest tightens, his appetite changes, his sleep is broken. The heart is addicted to the presence that once filled his world, and now, without it, the cravings rage. At first, it feels impossible to escape. He mistakes longing for love, pain for proof, and the ache for connection. But as the weeks pass, something remarkable begins. The heart, little by little, starts to detox. Detoxing isn't easy. Just like the body fights when it's starved of what it craves, the heart resists when it's denied familiar patterns. At night, it whispers reminders, songs, places, conversations. It tries to pull him back into the cycle, convincing him that one message, one call, one touch will bring relief. But no contact holds the line, and in that discipline the poison begins to drain. The same heart that once screamed for attention slowly starts to quiet. Each day of silence is a cleansing, each week a release. The toxins of dependency, obsession, and regret start to wash away. As the heart detoxes, clarity enters. What once felt like love, he begins to see for what it truly was: attachment, fear of being alone, comfort in the familiar. The detox process is painful because it forces him to separate the truth from the illusion. He begins to realize that not every connection is healthy, not every bond is love, and not every desire deserves to be fulfilled. His heart, once clouded by emotion, starts to beat cleaner, steadier. It learns to tell the difference between what it wants and what it needs, and often what it needs is not the person it lost, but the freedom it now has. The detox also reintroduces him to something he had forgotten: self-love. For so long, his heart was busy pouring into someone else, leaving himself empty. Now, with no one else to give to, he has no choice but to turn inward. The energy that once went outward begins to flow back into him. At first, it feels foreign, even selfish, but over time it feels natural, necessary. He starts to appreciate his own presence, his own company. He begins to treat himself with the care and patience he once begged for from others, and that shift, born from the detox, becomes the foundation for a stronger, healthier heart. Weeks into no contact, the detox deepens. The heavy emotion, anger, resentment, longing, start to dissolve. They don't vanish overnight, but they lose their grip. Where once he was consumed by them, now he can observe them. Instead of drowning in emotion, he stands above it, watching it flow. This distance gives him power. He realizes he doesn't have to react to every feeling, doesn't have to answer every urge, doesn't have to chase every shadow of the past. His heart, once enslaved by impulse, is now disciplined by silence. That discipline becomes strength, and that strength becomes peace. And then comes the breakthrough. The heart, once burdened, begins to feel light again. It beats not with desperation, but with hope. Not with dependence, but with freedom. The detox has done its work, flushing out the old, making room for the new. He doesn't forget the past, but it no longer poisons him. He doesn't deny the love, but he no longer chains himself to it. His heart, once broken, is now purified. And in that purity, he discovers a truth he never expected. No contact wasn't just about losing someone. It was about gaining himself. The detox didn't just cleanse his heart. It gave him a new one. In the beginning, silence feels like loss. He mistakes distance for rejection, solitude for punishment. His self-worth takes the heaviest hit because when love ends, or when contact is cut, he questions his own value. Am I not enough? Was I too much? Did I fail? These thoughts whisper in the dark hours, pulling him into doubt. For a while, he measures himself by what someone else did or didn't do, and that measurement is cruel. But weeks into no contact, something begins to shift. Slowly, quietly, he realizes that his value was never tied to another's approval. Self-respect, though buried, starts to rise again. Self-respect doesn't return with noise or fanfare. It comes like the sunrise, gradual, steady, unstoppable. He notices it in small ways at first, in the boundaries he begins to keep, in the discipline of not breaking no contact, in the way he says no to things that no longer serve him. Every day he honors himself by choosing not to chase, not to beg, not to lower his worth just to fill silence. Each choice becomes a brick in the rebuilding of his self-respect. What once felt like weakness now feels like strength. He starts to see that walking away, holding his ground, is not losing, it's winning. As his self-respect grows, so does his perspective. He begins to look back not with desperation, but with clarity. He sees the moments when he compromised too much, gave away pieces of himself to keep someone else comfortable. He remembers the times he silenced his own needs, thinking love meant sacrifice without limits. And now, with distance, he recognizes that love without self-respect isn't love, it's surrender. This realization changes everything. He stops asking what he did wrong and starts asking what he will no longer allow. The silence that once felt like punishment now feels like power. Self-respect also changes how he carries himself in the world. Weeks into no contact, his posture shifts, his energy sharpens, his presence grows stronger. People around him notice, even if they don't know the story. There's a calmness in his eyes, a firmness in his voice, a confidence in his steps. He no longer feels the need to explain himself, to prove himself, to justify his worth. The respect he has rebuilt within radiates outward, and the world responds. Opportunities, connections, even admiration begin to flow, not because he chases them, but because he now attracts them. Self-respect is magnetic, and he has become a magnet. With self-respect returned, temptation loses its hold. He no longer feels the same pull to break no contact, to reopen wounds, to prove something to someone else. Why? Because he no longer doubts himself. Respect for himself outweighs the craving for external validation. He understands that chasing after someone who walked away would only mean abandoning himself, and now he refuses to do that. He values his peace too much. He values his dignity too much. He values himself too much. No contact, once seen as a wall, is now his shield. It's not blocking him from love, it's protecting him from losing himself again. And in this state, something powerful happens: freedom. When self-respect returns, chains fall off. He no longer defines himself by the past, by someone's choice, or by the silence between them. He defines himself by his actions, his values, his vision. Self-respect gives him permission to dream again, to build again, to live again. And this time, he lives on his terms. Weeks after no contact, he stands taller not because he won someone back, but because he won himself back. And that victory, quiet, invisible to many, is the greatest one of all. At the start of no contact, his energy is scattered. Every ounce of strength goes into fighting impulses, resisting the urge to reach out, and wrestling with the memories that haunt him. The silence drains him because it feels unnatural, like holding back a river with bare hands. He spends hours thinking about the past, imagining conversations that will never happen, replaying moments that can't be changed. All that mental and emotional energy leaves him exhausted. But weeks into the silence, something begins to shift. The same energy he once wasted on chasing, waiting, and hoping begins to come back to him. And this time, it's his to keep. The rebuilding doesn't happen overnight. In fact, it comes in small sparks. He notices he has more energy to wake up earlier, to move his body, to focus on work. He starts reading again, journaling, or even just breathing deeper. The hours he once lost scrolling, checking, or wondering now belong to him. It's like reclaiming stolen time, and with each reclaimed hour, his energy grows stronger. The silence that once felt like emptiness now feels like fuel. He realizes the energy he poured into someone else is now flowing back into his own life, charging him from within. As the weeks unfold, he discovers the power of redirection. Energy is never truly lost, it's only misplaced. Before, his energy was tangled in chasing validation, in holding together what was already slipping away. But now, that same fire is redirected toward growth. He invests in his health, his craft, his vision. The workouts get longer, the projects get deeper, the goals get clearer. The more he pours into himself, the more energized he becomes. It's a cycle of renewal. Effort creates results. Results create pride. Pride fuels more effort. This is how energy rebuilds, not in one grand moment, but in consistent choices that compound into transformation. And then comes the surprising part, joy. Energy isn't just about strength or productivity, it's about feeling alive again. Weeks after no contact, he laughs more easily, breathes more freely, and moves with lighter steps. The heaviness that once clung to his shoulders starts to dissolve. He realizes energy isn't only about the body, but about the spirit. It's the spark in his eyes, the rhythm in his walk, the excitement for tomorrow. Where once he dragged himself through each day, now he greets the morning with possibility. The silence gave him back his spark, and that spark makes him unstoppable. This rebuilding of energy also changes how he sees challenges. What used to overwhelm him now feels like an opportunity to grow. He has the stamina to push through setbacks, the patience to build slowly, and the focus to stay committed. The energy he once wasted on doubt now fuels resilience, and resilience is power. He's no longer drained by chasing what's gone. He's energized by building what's ahead. The silence didn't weaken him, it recharged him. Every day of no contact became a day of renewal, a day of gathering strength that he never knew he had. And in this state of rebuilt energy, he becomes unrecognizable. People who once knew him notice the difference, his posture, his discipline, his fire. But the greatest change is within. He no longer feels like a man drained by loss. He feels like a man powered by purpose. Energy is his compass now, pointing him forward, not backward. Weeks after no contact, he doesn't just survive the silence. He thrives in it. The energy that once bled out of him has returned, rebuilt, and now it propels him toward the life he was always meant to create. At first, no contact feels like the end. The silence is unbearable, the days crawl, and he feels like he has lost everything. But weeks later, something remarkable begins. He realizes this was never an end. It was the beginning of transformation. The man who entered the silence is not the same man who walks through it. The pain that once consumed him has become the fire that forges him. What felt like death has quietly been shaping a rebirth. He is no longer who he was, and that change is not an accident. It is evolution. Transformation begins with subtle signs. He notices that what once triggered him no longer has the same power. The name, the memory, the silence, it no longer cuts as deep. His reactions slow, his emotions settle, and his vision clears. It's not that he forgets, it's that he's grown beyond it. The chains that once held him now feel weak, and with one decision, one step forward, they fall away. The silence has transformed his wounds into wisdom, and his weakness into strength. That's the first stage of transformation, realizing the past can no longer control him. As the weeks stretch, the transformation deepens. He carries himself differently, not with the heaviness of loss, but with the confidence of someone who has faced the storm and survived. His voice holds more weight, his eyes more certainty, his spirit more resilience. People may not know what he's been through, but they feel the change when he enters a room. It's not arrogance, it's presence. The silence has stripped him down to nothing and rebuilt him into something greater. Transformation is not loud, but it is undeniable. This transformation also reshapes his relationship with the future. Before, his vision was clouded by fear, fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of starting over. But now he looks ahead with clarity. He no longer builds his plans around someone else's approval or presence. His dreams are his again, his goals belong to him. The silence gave him back the steering wheel of his life, and now he drives with purpose. What once felt like the end of the road is now the opening of a new path, one he chooses, one he controls. And then comes the most powerful part of transformation, freedom. True freedom is not moving on from someone else. It's moving back into yourself. He is free from the need for validation, free from the chains of regret, free from the cycle of self-doubt. The silence taught him discipline, reflection, self-love, and resilience. All of these pieces now fuse together into transformation. He no longer seeks to prove his worth. He is his worth. No longer trapped by the past, he carries the future in his hands. Transformation is not just change, it's liberation. By the time the weeks have passed, the man who once questioned if he could survive without contact has become someone far greater. The silence that once broke him has rebuilt him. The pain that once crushed him has raised him higher. And the person who thought he lost everything realizes he has gained the most important thing of all, himself. Transformation emerges not as a moment, but as a process, and by enduring the silence, he has stepped into a version of himself he never thought possible. He is not who he was. He is stronger, wiser, freer. He has transformed. Asterisk. So what really happens weeks after no contact? He does not crumble. He does not stay broken. He learns, he grows, he rises. The storm settles, reflection sharpens, the heart detoxes, self-respect returns, energy rebuilds, and transformation takes flight. No contact was never about punishment. It was preparation for a man to meet himself again, to stand tall again, to remember who he is, what he's worth, and what he's capable of. And when he steps forward, he does not step forward as the same man who once begged, pleaded, or chased. He steps forward as a man reborn, sharper than pain, stronger than loss, freer than silence. That is what truly happens weeks after no contact. He doesn't just survive it. He becomes unstoppable because of it. Asterisk.